I'm going to invite Silvia Manca, Head of Cohesion, Competitiveness and Social Impact at EIF, who's going to moderate, and also her speakers, Hala Fadel from Eurazeo and Olya Kluepel from Global Growth Capital. Over to you, and yeah, take it away, Silvia. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, it works. So good afternoon, everybody, and thanks again on behalf of the EIB group for joining us at the third edition of Empowering Equity. Why this panel? You might, for those of you who are following us since the first edition, you might recall that the first edition was very much centered on the level of on the topic of masterclass. Like we wanted to show how the EF works and how the assessment process and the due diligence were carried out. Then the second edition was a mix of masterclass, but also about conversations on hot topics in the industry. And the third edition, of course, cannot avoid the theme of EU competitiveness that is at the heart of various political conversations, but also at the heart of all our actions, both on the public and on the private side. So we thought about combining the focus on role models that we are so lucky to have you both here on stage and also in the previous panels, but also in the audience, of women leaders, and at the same time, the focus on key themes that are so relevant for the EU competitiveness. Of course, we are aware that there are different pillars that are triggering the importance of EU competitiveness, but we had to make very tough decisions. So today, we decided to focus on two key market segments. On one side, the scale-up segment, we'd also focus on the exit environment. And the second one is the private credit. And this is why we have invited Hala and Olya for this conversation. So thank you very much for joining us. I would like to start with an overview, perhaps, about your organization, the role that you play in this organization, and maybe also an overview of the market in which you operate in. Who wants to start?
I can start,
please.
maybe.
Please go ahead.
So I'm Olya Kluepel. I am a managing partner of Global Growth Capital. We are actually 3 partners, and unusually so for private credit, it's 2 women and an Indian guy. So we are sort of the label of diversity. But it happened so not by design. We really liked working together. So that's probably the best way to start a firm. And we focus on what we believe is an underserved market segment in Europe. In particular, we focus on providing private credit solutions to software and financial technology companies in growth stage. So we feel that in Europe, there is now a fairly well-developed venture debt market, which is focused primarily at early stage companies. Then there is a very well-developed private credit market, the names that you would all know, which is who are primarily generalists and who by now raised significant amount of capital and therefore are looking at sort of 75 to 100 million transactions. However, the bulk of the European software companies, which we tend to target companies with EV between 100 million and 1 billion, of which surprisingly there are over close to 3,000, are not being serviced by the private credit community, and that's our aim.
Thank you. Hala?
Good afternoon, everyone. So, I don't know if I turn this on. Yes. So my name is Hala Fadel, and I'm a managing partner at Eurazeo. I'm also a member of the management committee. So Eurazeo is a private equity firm, a European private equity firm with about 40 billion under management. And I lead the growth equity at Eurazeo, which is tech investment from Series B to pre-IPO rounds. And in the growth equity team, we have about 5 billion under management. And we're currently raising our 4th vintage. And also a bit like Olya, not necessarily by design, but it so happens that in my team, we're 78% women. And the top 3 senior people in my team are all women. And within Eurazeo, we have about 50% men, 50% women, which is quite unusual for private equity. And this comes from a deliberate intention from the top, from the CEO, who really wanted that. So every recruitment process includes women in the pipeline. And I think as long as you have women in the pipeline and you let the process, flow, then and just about the market, because tech investing in Europe is a very interesting market and at a turning point in terms of EU competitiveness. I feel it works to our advantage because every single founding team, in terms of founders of tech companies in Europe, when we meet them, they always remember us because we come at least 2 or 3 women, and they've seen a bunch of, a series of 5 growth equity investor, mainly US, that are all male-led. So at least they don't forget us. So.
That's actually very interesting. Let me ask you this follow-up question. So you said they remember you. What is the change that you have seen in these founders since you started to show up indeed more and more women at the table? Is there a change that we have noticed, or we are talking about anecdotal examples?
No, you have. So first, I hope they remember us because we're competent, because we work hard. But then I would say what's interesting is that there are sometimes some unsolicited questions. Like, for example, without us saying anything, they start saying, I should have more women in my C-level team, or I should have more women on my board. And it's not something that we mention to them in the conversation. They just realize by just seeing us that there's something wrong, because all of a sudden they're confronted to competent women. So they're like, oh, why don't I have that within my team? So I think it's, so far the companies we wanted to invest in, because I took the leadership of this team just short of 2 years ago. So far the companies we wanted to invest in said yes to, so we didn't have a single no, touch wood. I don't know if it has anything to do with women-led thing, but for sure one of the first things they want to start working on with us is diversifying their team and their boards.
Fantastic. Do you have the same experience, Alia?
I think very similar. I don't think it's the interactions are different because I think the interactions are fundamentally about the business, about the financials, about the future of the market. However, we do get, not usually during the meeting, but more as a follow-up, because, again, of the presence of women, questions, we are looking for somebody, or can you please refer somebody? And I find that actually quite useful.
Okay. And if I may now, coming back to your professional journey, why did you decide to enter into the private credit market?
So I come from fixed income background from the very, very beginning. However, I think you've asked us differently, or previously you asked us about a story. And I think we, as women, sometimes hold ourselves back. And I had a very, story that changed me. It made me not hold back, because I was sort of coming from a banking background, and I remember a woman, speaking to a woman saying, I want to go into investments, and she basically said, you will never, ever make it. And it sort of made me say as a challenge, I said, how can you possibly say that? And so it was almost, she was not a friend, she was just an acquaintance. It was almost to prove. So that's really, a very prosaic maybe story of how I got into investments, but I find it extremely interesting, and but it was really part of a challenge.
And Hala, do you have any haha moment in your career that makes you believe that you were doing the right choice?
Yeah, very early on I did, so I studied in France, but I was lucky to do an exchange program with Berkeley in the US, and this is where I always say I caught the tech virus, because that was the mid-90s, so the very early days of the internet. And I think I knew I wanted to be in technology, and I loved investing, so now I'm doing the combination of both.
Okay, fantastic. Hala, let me state with you. So one of your activities also to accompany companies towards the exit. And I've been reading a little bit about this exit gap when it comes to women founders. Does it exist? Is this a myth? What's your assessment of the situation?
Because we're talking about EU competitiveness, I think in general there's an exit gap in Europe to start with. So I have to say I don't have the statistics for women exit gap, but so there is an exit gap full stop. So how can we deal with it? It's it comes to many potential solutions. You mentioned maybe the Draghi report at the beginning of your talk. I think this is an amazing report, and we have an exit gap because there's lack of capital, because you need capital to grow these companies to reach a certain size to be able to exit. So I think at this point it's not a gender problem. It's a structural problem of capital lacking in Europe, and we need much more capital to fund everything, but starting with technology if we want to be on the map, because we've kind of missed the map in terms of the first wave of technology, with most of the innovation being in the US and in China and in Israel. And now there's the AI innovation cycle in front of us. So do we want to be part of it or not? So it's as simple as that.
And Olya, if we look at your market segment, the private credit, what are the top 3 challenges that you believe we should overcome to make a difference for your competitiveness?
I think from a point of view of competitiveness, obviously Hala has mentioned the most important one, which is capital. It's simply, there is much less of it. And I think particularly so European LPs are investing extremely little. And connected to that, I think there is just a mindset or perception of risk, because I think for many European LPs, tech is still considered risky. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to the industry, but from my point of view, whether you're investing in German automotive or tech seems to be just strange perception of risk. So I think I would say there is a misperception of risk within the European investor community or European LP community. And secondly, I think it's a little bit of a European mindset problem. And I think you referred to Berkeley, and I had a similar experience in the US, is that when you speak to Americans, they usually try to grow the pie. And so they see this beautiful pie growing bigger and bigger, and the Europeans tend to split the pie, which means it really becomes a competitive problem rather than thinking of, let's do something together. And I think that, the capital will take time maybe to change, but the other two we can change quicker because it's really in our mental or in our head, really.
Thank you. I understand that we are talking indeed about structural problems, right, that need certainly bold solutions. And let me ask you the question, do you see a particular superpower, since we were talking about superpower before, that women leaders can use in this very challenging environment to drive the change? And if you have, I don't know, examples at your level where you managed to drive the change within your organization or within a specific project?
Maybe if I can rephrase the question to answer it maybe differently, and maybe referring to what Olya was saying in terms of the mindset. I think in an earlier panel there was the importance of diversity that was highlighted. So I don't think that women alone can do something, but if you want to change the mindset, a diverse team will open your mind, you will be more risk takers, more positive about what you can achieve together. And this is, and it's not just diversity, it's not just women. It's diversity of opinions, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of social backgrounds. So if you have a team that, reflects society at the end, rather than a team that represents only one segment of society, then you will think together in a mindset that will be much more constructive, and this is what will drive change.
I have actually a true superpower for women, which is empathy. I think empathy is, and I think that's partially why you also win deals, because I think that's why we win deals. We actually listen and try to understand what the business is trying to create. And I think in a lot of financial interactions, many only male teams try to push a product, Whereas we try to create a product because we listen. And I think that's, for all of you, that's really a way to improve also your deal pipeline, your interactions with LPs and everything else, because we can listen.
And Olya, let me state with you, there are some research that shows that it's in the private credit, there are less than 8% of senior private credit investors. Does this resonate to you? Does it correspond to reality, or you are seeing a different reality in your world?
I think that's true today, but I do genuinely see that changing. I think it probably was, I don't know, feeling 1% previously. I think you've certainly had a wonderful pipeline of women coming. And what are the sources for us in terms of investors? It's really primarily banking and consulting. Banking and consulting have changed. It just takes time for these women to become older and experienced. So we now, whereas before we wouldn't have seen, or I would have been the only woman in the room, or not very far. I think now you have very, very, very many very capable credit investors in Europe who are women. And in fact, the next phase also went up. There's a woman founder of Varde Partners who's now created a seeder fund only for women founders in credit. And I think that's amazing initiative to encourage more and more women to go, because that's where the capital follows now.
Do you want to intervene?
I don't know what the percentage is for private equity and tech, but I imagine it's quite low as well. But I agree that I can see the change coming, and it certainly feels less lonely than a few years back. We probably started our careers about the same time, and it was quite lonely back then. So I mentioned at the beginning that we have 78% women in my team. I think what brought, because I recruited 8 people this year, I didn't intend to recruit women necessarily. I just wanted to recruit competent professionals. But many women were applying just because it's a women-led team, because they really want to be part of a team where there's no, at least perceived, glass ceiling to where they can go.
The concept of glass ceiling. So before we heard Tatiana from the Sista Fund talking about the fact that breaking the glass ceiling, it is happening, but it hurts. Did you have experience where this hurt, or it was a very linear process, like in your journey towards your leadership positions?
I can start. I mean, you can think of it as, in the beginning, I was endlessly frustrated because I was always treated, and no disrespect meant, as a marketing girl. I mean, you walk into the meeting and I literally had a conversation once where I was pitching our fund, and the person said, a male has said, very, very interesting, may I speak to the investment partner? I said, I am the investment partner. He's like, no, I mean, may I speak to the investment partner? Like, he repeated it. And I found it mind-boggling. And this was actually within the last 12 months as well. But I think you just go through it. And you realize that sometimes you just don't want to deal with that firm, right? And you move on, but.
So, I think it happens all the time. I don't see it as, necessarily painful, but it's draining in terms of energy. Because sometimes I feel I need to speak much louder just to be heard. Or credibility is questioned. I was just mentioning to a few people that later than yesterday I had a board meeting where there was an all-male board meeting where there was one guy asking me what I knew about one topic so bluntly. And I think for sure he would not have done it if I looked different or if I was from a different gender. So it's just, I feel it's okay. We're just other people, not just women, people of color face the same challenges, and I guess we're doing it to pave the way for the next generation. So it's exciting in a way.
Absolutely. And I have a little bit of a personal question. So sometimes I do work at the EIF. So we are now at the EIF. We are in the almost perfect gender balance. Sometimes I find myself in meetings with all male colleagues that are super nice and I love them to death. But sometimes when I acknowledge the fact that I'm just the only woman in the room, I feel like maybe sometimes intimidated, but without them doing anything. It's just my personal perception. So my question is, do you sometimes feel the same or have felt the same in the past? And is this maybe just a vulnerability on our side that we think too much about that, or it's really something just to acknowledge and then, as you were saying, Olya, to just go through?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's a very personal question. I feel it depends because I've had so many great male colleagues where I never felt I'm the only woman in the room. I just felt, I'm a colleague like any other person. And then if you feel this, I mean, at least if I feel this, it means that it's not necessarily a friendly room. Let's put it that way. But so today, I would say the percentage of friendly rooms versus unfriendly rooms is way higher. So that's a good point.
I think I learned from my father to just judge a person because I think it's men, women, green, black, purple. It doesn't really matter. It's what matters is a person. And I think then it's exactly that. It's either the people are competent and nice, or they're incompetent, or they're whatever.
Thank you. No, I subscribe to that. Very friendly rooms. It's just that maybe I'm more sensitive now to realizing that sometimes I'm the only woman, but this is of course changing. So it might be a personal also vulnerability in a sense. Thank you. I think we are reaching the end of the panel, and I would like to ask you, what advice would you give to the GPs, for instance, that are here with us in the room or also elsewhere for successful fundraising?
I think very easy, hard work and be nice. Because I think we all speak about the challenges in Europe of startups. I think we all, or you are all startups, right? So it doesn't happen without hard work. And, it's great to have mentors, but it is you who would have to raise capital. It is you who will have to find these companies. And I found through my career that being nice, or actually referring people, is extremely important, because that, it's maybe I believe in karma, but that comes back. And I think a lot of our deal flow is, comes from founders that we maybe even said no, but we were nice about it and suggested competitors. And then they come back. And I think that is really important, in particular in industries like ours, which is very much reliant on networks. So that's...
Thanks. And Hala?
Yeah, I love the karma thing because I think it's so important, especially, so for example, within Eurazeo, we have also this network of women. And we have this rule that whenever someone asks us a question about, say, Silvia, the answer will always be positive, just to... and then if I have something to say to Silvia, I say to Silvia, but never to the outside world, just to... so my advice would be the same, like it's hard work, and I wouldn't mention the women factor, because, it's just... It's good to be self-conscious when you need to, but most of the cases, I would say today, you really don't need to, so... Yeah.
On this note, I thank you both very, very much. And I invite you to give a round of applause to these two wonderful leaders.